So, hello, hello, hello. In this episode, we again wanted to talk about the research about a video game. And in this case, of course, I want to talk about Kingdom Come Deliverance again. So again, I used Google Scholar to give you a little bit of an overview. Again, this is not a proper literature study like we would do in academia, but it just gives you an overview of some of the papers, some of the work which are talking about this topic. And you can already see if I look for Kingdom Come Deliverance, I will find like around 800-ish results, or it's just a few of them really talk about the video game. So for that, I use Google Scholar. There are like a lot of different databases which you can use to do search for academic papers. This is just like a little bit of a summary. Like very often we use the digital library from ACM or IEEE Explorer. And what you can see here, and I just want to point out, I'm not a historian, right? But you can find a lot of papers in the realm either of game studies or of history. Both I'm not an expert in, so I'm coming from a computer science background, game design, game development background, and educational tech background. And those are especially the things which I already promoted in the past video, find extremely exciting about Kingdom Come Deliverance. Because of course there are a lot of papers, as we can already see in this list, which do discuss how historically accurate Kingdom Come Deliverance is, and will talk about specific points within the game. However, something which I find most interesting to talk about from my research perspective is, so for the one hand, how they achieve this immersion, this feeling of immersion, that we can feel that we are part of this game. And this is something which I find personally Kingdom Come Deliverance doing really well. And the next thing which I find highly interesting is the things which are being told in there with historical relevance. Is this something which is teaching us something? Is this something which is exciting us about history or education? So this is something which I find super interesting to talk about, and I'm super excited that some of those papers are actually especially talking about this potential. So for instance, here, the gamification of the Middle Ages, educational discourse of Kingdom Come Deliverance. Yeah, so what is happening, and there's another video on this channel where we talked about how Warhorse Studios is actually trying to achieve this time machine effect, so that we have the feeling that we are part of those historical world. In that case, Bohemia of 1403. And that's not as a fantasy setting, but that it's trying to add historical interesting artifacts, architecture, weapons, clothing, social structures, you name them, environments, and some scenes as quests, or again as environment. And the interesting aspect is this feeling of immersion, that we, since it's a video game, and this is a little bit of benefit of a video game compared to other media, that we have the possibility to try to feel part of this environment. However, we always need to have in our mind that there is nothing like having a very accurate historical representation, especially with this, like in general, but especially then when it comes to a trade-off with the game design aspects. So the main question some of those papers are asking, again, there are a lot of papers discussing the authenticity in digital games in general, the representations of specific elements within the game, but also the potential for the educational discourse. And again, this talk and this video is supposed to give you a little bit of an overview what some of the talking points of those papers are, and it's just to basically motivate and excite you about the potential of such papers, and to make you aware that a platform like this and many of those papers are for everyone free to access. And you'll find like a lot of analysis. So this is like a more than 100-page thesis about the topic of representations in the Middle Ages in digital games in general, and they have Kingdom Come Deliverance as one of the use cases. So you'll find a lot of interesting papers, theses, even dissertations, not all of them in English. So let's jump into a couple of example papers. So this one again, since this is like one of the topics I'm very excited about, is the idea of using Kingdom Come Deliverance with this gamification strategy. I'm always like a little bit careful when it comes to the wording gamification, but usually it's the coining that I use gaming elements in non-gaming context. Sometimes they would use it to make non-gaming things fun. So in this case, education. But I'm always a little bit careful with the wording gamification per se. And in this paper, they want to understand the potential of this game as an educational tool for medieval history. And they describe different gamification theories. There are couple of theories out there, and try to analyze the historical narrative and gameplay aspects of the game, compare it with other historical games, for instance, and then try to analyze a little bit what is the potential of this game, especially for education. And what they find, that especially like the interactive engagement with medieval Bohemia, then that the high historical immersion would enhance motivation and understanding, especially motivation, again, which I find highly interesting, to use a tool like this to motivate others to learn more about these concepts. But also that some of the gameplay mechanics would provide very immersive and practical insights. So for instance, like warfare and religion, and will excite people to learn about those topics. And they would also compare it to other historical games, and what you can see here, for instance, that they describe some specific towns and try to compare it a little bit, how this can be used for teaching, or the historical buildings, and then they would also describe and compare it with other historical games. And for Kingdom Come Deliverance, they found that here it's very interesting that you really have a very high level of immersion achieved, a deeper immersion, which then also leads to excitement, engagement, and the educational possibilities, the educational potential. And here it's also a little bit the topic about like how the knowledge is transmitted. This I find also quite interesting to look at. So if we create historical knowledge, how can this be communicated and transmitted? And in this case, and this is something which I find really lovely, they're using this codex system in Kingdom Come Deliverance. In this paper, they compared the Kingdom Come Deliverance also with other RPGs like Elder Scrolls. And in this case, in this game, they employ a very interesting approach by presenting historic content as facts in a codex, for instance. And yeah. And the whole study would examine how games can also be used as a medium to start discussions. So this claim authority over historical knowledge and the implications of an objective historical narrative in digital media, again, is something which many of those studies would discuss and should be discussed. And this is also, again, a very strong voice about this topic from a very different field again. And the last paper, this would be the representation of medieval realia in PC gaming. and this would analyze the representation of medieval politics, geography, society, warfare. So in this paper, they evaluate the accuracy of historical figures, architectures, weapons, armor, social structures, and would compare them with historical sources. And what they finding would suggest is that the game provides immersive medieval experience and excites and tells about the daily life, the architecture, and combat mechanics. And it is shown, and this is also something which we discussed in the other talk, that due to the game design necessities, it's historically inspired and needs to find some adjustment elements for gameplay and narrative. The combat system is praised for the realism. However, something like social elements or medieval professions are also well presented, but also some inaccuracies like the lack of crossbows, firearms, and so on and so forth are also noted. So this is a very interesting paper which is demonstrating the potential but also flaws of using games as historical simulations, because you always have to balance the authenticity and the playability. But again, it also underlines that it's fostering interest in medieval history. So to sum it up, this is again just a little bit of an overview how science is talking about games in general, what we can learn from science about games, and what science might be interested in different games. And we can see here where this is very different topics than we saw for Path of Exile, for instance. And we can see here like many of the topics are around the topic of history. Is it accurate? Can it be used for education? How can it be used for education? And I find, if I would summarize, I think we all have a common understanding that it is not fully accurate, and there are very interesting critical voices showing a little bit the trade-offs here. But again, this is a game which is, I think, one of the strongest ones in this realm, which is really trying to convey some aspects, at least, is trying to let us immerse in this time machine aspect. And I feel like a game like this has so much potential to excite and to bring people to discuss about a specific topic. And those are exactly the games I think we need to have people think, to have people discuss, to have it maybe used in schools, but then with a companion guide and a teacher who critically discusses the game and its implications with us. So with that, I hope you got a little bit of a insight again how science and games sort of merge sometimes, and I hope you find this interesting again. Thank you so much, and I hope you feel free to subscribe this channel if you want to learn more about games, and hopefully also a little bit more about the tech of games in the future talks. Bye.